Welcome to Module 5. Our topic this week is adolescence. Adolescence begins with the onset of puberty and is typically believed to end at age 18. We'll use ages 12 to 18 for the purposes of our study. Of course, in the physical domain, the big story of adolescence is puberty, that process by which a child changes into an adult. The first changes we notice are clearly evident. Young men grow noticeably taller, the shoulders broaden, and the voice becomes deeper. Young women may continue to grow taller, but not in the same dramatic fashion that we see in boys. Girls typically take on a softer profile as the ratio of body fat to muscle increases. Internally, changes are even more dramatic as the release of hormones facilitates the move to sexual maturity. This involves the primary sex characteristics or organs used in reproduction and the secondary sex characteristics or the outward signs of a masculine or feminine body. One final aspect of physical development to mention is the growth of the brain. The march toward maturity continues as improved myelination allows faster speed of thought. Although executive function improves, emotion is still supreme as most adolescents would rather follow their emotions. Physical problems in adolescence tend to cluster around body image, with obesity and eating disorders creating issues for both males and females. Sexual activity in adolescence creates additional physical problems. Let's look now at the cognitive domain. Cognitive skills take a giant leap forward as adolescents enter Piaget's final stage of intelligence called formal operational thought. In this stage, Piaget said adolescents are finally capable of forming hypothetical thoughts and using deductive reasoning. That is why the young man or woman who seems so level-headed at one moment may do something totally impulsive and foolish in the next. This is unfortunately typical adolescent behavior, but it will get better as the brain continues to mature. Parents and other adults can help by continuing to encourage good choices. Several interesting characteristics of thought processing include a return to egocentrism. If you've ever listened to a young man or woman say, "I can't wear that to school, everybody will laugh at me," you've witnessed firsthand the adolescent tendency to believe in the imaginary audience. Next, the personal fable is the egocentric belief that a young man or woman is super gifted. This would be the young athlete who sees him or herself winning Olympic gold, playing in the NFL, or performing at Carnegie Hall. Now, a quick disclaimer here. I believe firmly in the power of dreaming big and trusting God to do great things. Liberty University is an example of many people, beginning with Dr. Jerry Falwell, who believed God to do great things through their efforts. The personal fable is different, though. The personal fable is more about a person dreaming that good things will happen apart from the hard work it takes to make them happen. Closely related to the personal fable is the invincibility fable, believed by many young people. Adolescents tend to take risks that we adults think are insane. They believe they are too young, too special, and too strong to die. Let's move next to psychosocial development. The big story in the psychosocial domain is identity formation. Erikson called this crisis identity versus role confusion. The path to adulthood seems to be easier for adolescents with a strong sense of who they are. Research indicates that positive identity formation has many positive outcomes. Erikson identified 4 arenas or aspects of identity formation. They are work, faith, politics, and gender. These are important areas in which one establishes their identity. Now, just a quick clarification here about gender identity, as this can be confusing to some students. When Erikson developed this theory, the need to establish gender identity meant choosing your gender roles. How would you choose to express your masculine or feminine nature? Would you choose a traditional gender role or one that was unconventional? For example, culture at that time dictated that certain roles were to be filled by men and certain roles were held by women. Of course, these lines have been largely erased in our modern culture, and it's fairly common to see men and women in non-traditional roles. Here we have a female construction worker contrasted with a stay-at-home mom. Here we have a stay-at-home dad contrasted with one who has chosen to become a doctor. Recently, our culture has shifted toward the idea that biological gender identity is a choice, that we can choose our biological gender just as we choose our gender roles. The difficulty with that thought process is that one's biological identity is written into every cell of your body. We can change our external appearance and our behavior, but our biological makeup as a male or female does not change simply because we assume a role that corresponds to our chosen identity. Obviously, this is a sensitive issue that requires thoughtful and compassionate consideration. But for right now, let's move on to spiritual development. When one thinks about adolescence, spirituality and faith are not typically the first things that come to mind. But we know from Scripture, from contemporary examples, and from research that adolescents do seek a connection with God and have a heart to serve Him. First, let's think about young men and women in Scripture who served God in their adolescent years. Joseph, David, Esther, Daniel, Mary, and Timothy are just a few that I can think of. But modern-day adolescent heroes are out there too. One great example is an amazing young woman named Katie Davis. Katie went to Africa on a mission trip while in high school. Her heart was captured by what she saw there, and when others her age were leaving for college, Katie chose instead to go to Africa. There, she adopted 13 children and started a ministry. Her story is told in the book, Kisses from Katie. This is a picture of some of the children she has helped. Empirical research also indicates that adolescents may be more in tune with spirituality than one might expect. Here are some results from a massive research project led by Christian Smith of Notre Dame and Lisa Pierce from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They found that 84% of American teens aged 13 to 17 said they believe in God. 51% said religious faith is very important or extremely important in shaping their daily life. 36% said that they feel very close or extremely close to God. This flies in the face of conventional wisdom that tells us adolescents are not interested in spiritual matters. So what are the factors that facilitate spiritual growth in adolescence? Surprisingly enough, the same things that worked in earlier stages also work here. Christian Smith emphasizes the importance of relationships with adult mentors. He states that parents are particularly influential in facilitating spiritual growth during adolescence. His research also indicates that the more an adolescent is involved in the practice of their faith, the better. This seems overly simple, but if a person is only attending church once a week, their commitment to God will not be as great as the individual who is practicing Christian disciplines on a daily basis. Think back to the verse we shared a few weeks ago, Deuteronomy 6:7. Make faith a part of your daily conversation. Be an example of a faith-filled life. Encourage prayer, Bible study, and meditation. Finally, be perceptive. Consider the developmental characteristics of adolescents. They will question your beliefs and standards. They seem to need opportunities to test their newly developed reasoning skills. Provide opportunities for this. Let them ask hard questions. Don't be intimidated by their inquiries. You don't need to have all the answers, just be willing to join them in seeking truth. Finally, I want to share the challenge Paul wrote to Timothy, his apprentice in the faith. This is something we can use to encourage all the adolescents in our life. 1 Timothy 6:11b from the English Standard Version says, "But as for you, O man of God, flee these things. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, and gentleness." Thank you for watching. I hope this brief overview of adolescence has been helpful.